I always thought my father was a complicated man, cold, distant, but never evil. That was, until I found his diary, and my world shattered. At first, it was curiosity, just some old notebook tucked away in a drawer after his passing. But page after page, I uncovered something I was never meant to see. Plans. Secrets. Manipulations so precise, it felt less like family history and more like a blueprint for betrayal. Then I saw my son's name. Not just mentioned, targeted. My little boy, only 7 years old, caught in a scheme I couldn't begin to understand at first. And at the center of it all, my father, a man I thought was long past meddling in our lives, pulling strings from beyond the grave to control money, legacy, even bloodlines. What kind of man steals his own grandson, and worse, hides it behind the mask of tradition, inheritance, and twisted love? I read that diary 4 times before I believed it. But once I did, I realized everything in my life, every conversation, every sudden change, every missing moment with my son, had a motive hidden behind it. You think you know your family, until you learn the truth they buried with the will. And trust me, some legacies are written in lies. And the lies, they were like a disease. They spread through my memories, twisting everything I thought I knew. The diary became my obsession. I carried it everywhere, the worn leather a constant reminder of the betrayal. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's spidery handwriting, those meticulously crafted sentences outlining his cruel plan. The plan, as I pieced it together, was chillingly simple. My father, obsessed with preserving his legacy, saw my son, his only grandson, as a pawn. A pure-blooded heir, untainted by what he considered my wife's inferior lineage. He wanted to mold him, control him, ensure he inherited everything. Not just the money, but the warped sense of family pride that had consumed him his entire life. He'd started subtly, planting seeds of doubt about my wife's family, whispering stories of instability and questionable morals. I dismissed it then as the ramblings of an old man clinging to outdated traditions. Now, I saw it for what it was, manipulation. He was isolating me, preparing the ground for his twisted scheme. The diary detailed arranged meetings, coded messages, even payments made to people I'd never heard of. It was a network of deceit, woven so tightly around my life that I hadn't even noticed the threads. My father had manipulated every aspect of my son's life, from his school choices to his extracurricular activities. He'd even orchestrated chance encounters with distant relatives I barely knew, all part of his grand plan to alienate my son from his mother and me. Then came the entries about the transfer. The word itself sent a shiver down my spine. He wrote about a secluded property, a place where my son would be re-educated, shielded from the corrupting influences of my wife's family. He even outlined a plan to fabricate evidence of my wife's unsuitability as a mother, ensuring he'd gain full custody. The more I read, the more I realized how little I knew about the man who raised me. The cold, distant father I remembered was a carefully constructed facade. Beneath it lurked a calculating mind, capable of unspeakable cruelty. I started digging, following the cryptic clues in the diary. The secluded property he mentioned. It existed. Registered under a shell corporation, untraceable to my father, but the timing of its purchase aligned perfectly with the entries in the diary. I drove out there, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach with every mile. It was a remote place, nestled deep in the woods, miles from civilization. The house itself was old, imposing, with an air of decay clinging to it like a shroud. There were no signs of life, no cars in the driveway, just an unsettling silence that pressed down on me. I circled the property, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to know. I had to see if my son was there. I tried the front door, expecting it to be locked, but it swung open with a groan, revealing a dimly lit hallway. The air inside was thick with the smell of dust and something else, something faintly sweet, almost cloying. It was a smell I couldn't place, but it sent a wave of unease washing over me. I called out my son's name, my voice trembling. Silence. I stepped inside, my hand brushing against the peeling wallpaper. The house felt empty, yet there was a lingering sense of something, or someone, just out of sight. I moved deeper into the house, the floorboards creaking beneath my weight. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every closed door a potential hiding place. I found a living room, sparsely furnished, with a fireplace filled with cold ashes. A child's drawing lay on the floor, a crudely drawn picture of a house with a single, ominous figure standing outside. My blood ran cold. I picked up the drawing, my fingers tracing the lines. It was my son's style, his unmistakable childish scribbles. But the figure outside the house, it was tall, imposing, with a familiar silhouette. It looked like my father. Panic clawed at my throat. He was here. Somewhere in this house. Or maybe, he'd been here. Recently. I continued my search, the silence amplifying my fear. I found a bedroom, small and bare, with a single bed covered in a thin blanket. A book lay open on the nightstand, a children's story about a boy who gets lost in the woods. My son's favorite. I sank onto the bed, the weight of my father's betrayal crushing me. He hadn't just stolen my son, he'd stolen my sense of reality, my trust in everything I'd ever known. Then, I heard it. A faint sound, coming from the floor above. A footstep. Light and hesitant, like a child trying to be quiet. My heart leaped into my throat. My son. He was here. I stood up, my legs trembling, and started towards the stairs. The sweet, cloying smell was stronger now, almost overpowering. It was coming from upstairs. As I reached the top of the stairs, I saw a figure standing in the hallway. Small, silhouetted against the dim light filtering in from a window at the end of the hall. "David?" I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. The figure turned, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't my son. It was a woman. Young, with long, dark hair and eyes that gleamed in the shadows. And in her arms, she held a small, sleeping child. A child who looked exactly like my father. My mind reeled. The child, he was the spitting image of my father as a baby, a picture I'd seen countless times in the family albums. But that was impossible. My father was dead. Buried. Gone. The woman stared at me, her expression unreadable. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, broken only by the soft breaths of the child in her arms. Who was she? And what was she doing here, in this desolate house, with a child who looked like a ghost from my past? Who are you? I managed to stammer, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't answer. She just continued to stare, her eyes fixed on me with an unsettling intensity. Then, slowly, deliberately, she shifted the child in her arms, revealing a small, silver locket around his neck. It was identical to one my father had always worn, a family heirloom passed down through generations. My breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be. But the evidence was right there in front of me, undeniable, chilling. He's your son?" I asked, the words catching in my throat. She nodded, a single, slow movement of her head. Then, in a voice as soft as the rustle of leaves, she spoke. "He's your brother." The world tilted on its axis. Brother? My father had another child. A secret son, hidden away, kept from me my entire life. The implications crashed over me like a tidal wave, washing away everything I thought I knew about my family, about my father, about myself. But, how? I stammered, my mind struggling to grasp the enormity of this revelation. "He loved my mother," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "He kept us a secret. Protected us. Protected them. While he manipulated and schemed to steal my son." The injustice of it burned in my chest, a white-hot rage that threatened to consume me. "Where is my son?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. The woman's eyes flickered, a hint of fear crossing her face. I don't know." I didn't believe her. I could see it in her eyes, the flicker of deceit, the carefully constructed mask of innocence. She knew something. She had to. "Don't lie to me," I growled, stepping closer. "Where is David?" She flinched, backing away slightly, clutching the child tighter. "I swear, I don't know. He left him with me. Said he had to take care of something. He never came back. Left him with her. Just abandoned him." It didn't make sense. My father, for all his flaws, wouldn't just abandon a child, especially not his own grandson, the heir he'd obsessed over for so long. "When?" I pressed, my voice tight with suspicion. "A few weeks ago," she whispered, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "Weeks?" He'd been gone for weeks. And my father, where was he? Dead, supposedly. But what if he wasn't? What if this was all another part of his twisted plan? The sweet, cloying smell suddenly hit me again, stronger than ever. It was coming from the child in her arms. I leaned closer, my senses on high alert. It wasn't a perfume, not a lotion. It was medicinal. "What's wrong with him?" I asked, my voice laced with a new kind of fear. The woman hesitated, her eyes wide with panic. He's sick," she finally admitted, her voice barely audible. "Sick? What kind of sick? And why hadn't she taken him to a doctor?" The questions piled up, each one more unsettling than the last. I reached out, gently touching the child's forehead. He was burning up. Feverish. And his breathing, it was shallow, labored. "We need to get him to a hospital," I said, my voice firm, decisive. The woman shook her head, her eyes filled with tears. "No. We can't. They'll take him away." "Take him away? Who would take him away? And why?" The pieces of the puzzle were swirling around me, fragmented, disjointed, refusing to form a coherent picture. "Who will take him away?" I asked, my voice low, menacing. She didn't answer. She just clutched the child tighter, her body trembling with fear. And in that moment, I knew. I knew there was more to this story than she was letting on. More secrets, more lies, buried beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed. I had to find my son. And I had to uncover the truth, no matter how dark and twisted it might be. This was no longer just about my family, it was about a child's life, a child caught in the crossfire of a legacy built on deceit. And I wouldn't rest until I brought him home. "They'll take him away," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper, because he's not really mine. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. The child's illness, the locket, her fear, it all pointed to something far more sinister than I could have imagined. "He's my son," she confessed, tears streaming down her face. But my father forced me. He said it was the only way to secure our future, to finally get what he deserved. My father. Always my father. His shadow loomed over everything, even now, even in death. "What did he promise you?" I asked, my voice tight with barely controlled rage. She hesitated, then blurted out, He said he'd make sure we were taken care of, that we'd never want for anything. He said he'd give us the inheritance, that it rightfully belonged to his bloodline." The inheritance. Of course. It always came back to the money, the power, the legacy. My father's obsession, the driving force behind all his manipulations. He'd used this woman, used her child, as pawns in his twisted game. And my son, where did he fit into all of this? Where is David? I demanded again, my patience wearing thin. This time, she didn't hesitate. He's with my mother. She's taking care of him." Relief washed over me, so potent it almost brought me to my knees. He was alive. He was safe. For now. "Take me to him," I said, my voice unwavering. She nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. We left the house, the oppressive atmosphere clinging to us like a second skin. She led me to a small cottage nestled deeper in the woods, hidden amongst the trees. As we approached, I heard a child's laughter, light and carefree. My son's laughter. The world shifted, the colors becoming brighter, the air lighter. He was there. He was okay. I pushed open the cottage door and there he was, playing on the floor with an elderly woman, his face lit up with a smile. He looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. "Daddy," he cried, running towards me. I scooped him up in my arms, holding him tight, burying my face in his hair. The relief was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion that washed away the fear and uncertainty. But even as I held my son, I knew this wasn't over. My father's web of deceit was still unraveling, and there were more secrets to uncover. I looked at the woman, my newfound half-sister, her face etched with worry. "Your mother," I said, "she knows about your father's plan." She nodded, her eyes downcast. She helped him. She believed him when he said it was for the best. Another victim of my father's manipulation. Another life twisted by his greed. I knew then what I had to do. I had to expose him, even in death. I had to bring his lies to light, not just for myself, but for my son, for my sister, for everyone he'd hurt. The following weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, investigations, and painful revelations. My father's will was contested, his estate tied up in litigation. The truth about his affair, his other son, his elaborate scheme to steal my child, it all came out. The family name, once a symbol of pride and prestige, was now tarnished, irrevocably stained by his actions. My half-sister and her son, my nephew, moved in with me. We became a strange, unconventional family, bound together by the shared trauma of my father's legacy. It wasn't easy. There were moments of anger, resentment, and grief. But there were also moments of connection, understanding, and even love. My son, thankfully, seemed unaffected by the ordeal. He was too young to fully grasp the complexities of the situation, but he thrived in the presence of his new aunt and cousin. They became inseparable, a constant source of joy and laughter in a house that had once been filled with secrets and lies. As for me, I found a strange sense of peace in the chaos. The truth, no matter how painful, had set me free. I was no longer living in the shadow of my father's lies. I was finally able to build my own life, my own legacy, based on honesty and love, not deceit and manipulation. The diary remained, a constant reminder of the darkness I'd escaped. But it was also a symbol of my resilience, my strength, my ability to overcome even the most devastating betrayal. And as I looked at my son, his eyes bright with innocence, I knew I would do everything in my power to protect him, to shield him from the darkness that had almost consumed us all. The fight for my family was over, but the journey towards healing had just begun. The diary sits on my desk now, not hidden away in shame, but as a stark reminder of how fragile truth can be, how easily manipulated by those we trust most. It's a testament to the enduring power of family, not the one we're born into, but the one we choose, the one we fight for. The laughter of my son and nephew echoes through the house, a constant melody of hope and resilience. We are a family, forged in the fires of betrayal, bound by the shared understanding of what it truly means to love and protect. My father's legacy may be one of deceit, but ours will be one of truth. We will carry the scars of his actions, but they will not define us. We will rise from the ashes of his lies, stronger, more united, and more determined than ever to create a future filled with light. If you found this story as gripping and chilling as the secrets hidden within a forgotten diary, then you'll want to hear more. Our channel delves into the dark corners of the human psyche, exploring the twisted paths we take and the unexpected consequences that follow. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next descent into the shadows. Like this video if you too believe that sometimes, the greatest mysteries lie within the ones we love.